How are you feeling?
Not good.
Not exactly what I had in mind.
Погода пока нормальная, поднимаемся на верхнюю палубу.
Then we have a tour there, visit the Baikal Museum and get to the viewpoint. And of course have a tour along the settlement, visit some souvenir shop, fish market, and just enjoy the time, I believe. If you do have any questions, you're welcome.
Are we going when in a walk or going to St. Nicholas Church? Or?
We'll try to use the bus as much as possible. We get to the certain spot, then do some walking, and then get back to the bus and get to another place. I'll show you on one of the hills the Church of St. Nicholas. This short, and then the next one is over there.
So are we going to the church or not?
Yes, we will.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Sorry, thanks.
And tomorrow within the city tour, we also will visit churches.
Yeah.
Just to remind you, probably you do have experience visiting Russian Orthodox churches, I don't know. But anyway, you've got to remember, ladies, supposed to enter in the church, they've got to cover their head with the scarf, cap, hat, whatever you have, anything. Just make sure that you have one. Ladies can rope the Trans-Siberia. Get there.
I got one on the cheek. I'll normally get I'm the first to the leg.
Not too much. There's a few reasons. Because first of all, it's a pretty big lake. And as for the river, we have 4 dams on the river Angara that regulate the level of the water. But of course, there are some seasonal.
Yes.
Well, the triangulation is going to be more than 600,000. There are some fish hatcheries and they do regulate the population somehow. And it's an actual process. And I can't say that if some of the species are endangered or something, it's quite okay. I mean, quite enough. But we would say that actually it depends. So it's like a way, less way. Private cars, local ones also come here by themselves. They bring their friends or whoever. Also here.
No, it's okay.
Famous, full of extraordinary features. And this is the lake that's considered to be really the treasure of the mankind. But all the details I will represent as soon as we get to the museum and see the main exposition. The exposition consists of few halls and the aquariums, where you will be able to see the seals, freshwater seals of Lake Baikal, and also some representatives of the fish family. But to get there, we've got to drive along the settlement that is called Listyanka. The name Listyanka originates from the name of the tree. You see, there are plenty of large trees if you take a look to your right-hand side. Just on the hills you can see the trees, some of them pine trees, but the majority are large. L-A-R-C-H. That's the tree that looks like pine tree in summer, but when autumn comes, it sheds its needles. Though Irkutsk is a historical city and there are so many pages of Russian history connected with Irkutsk, and especially as the place of exile. Tomorrow, within the city tour, I will be able to tell you the settlement of Listyanka is not pretty big. The population is roughly about 2,500 people. Some of them, majority, live here all the year round. And as you see, the whole settlement is located in the valleys, like the one we're passing by to your right-hand side, or just along the shoreline. The length of the settlement is roughly about 5 kilometers, just along the shoreline. Within the summertime, or to walk through the forest, because there is a pretty famous tourist Baikal trail built by the volunteers. But the distance between this settlement and the next ones, to dive under the water of Lake Baikal is pretty interesting. But definitely, the underwater landscape is not as colorful as the wildlife, some fish, crustaceans, and some other organisms that live under the water. If you do have some carry-ons, you can leave them in the bus. The only thing that you will need is probably just your camera to take some photos. Starts here in May and lasts up to the end of September. But there will be another peak. Is located in the middle of the Asian continent. It is fed by 336 rivers that they all feed the lake, and only one river flows out of it. It's River Angara. We are right over here. That's the mouth of River Angara. It flows out of Lake Baikal, goes northwest to Yenisei, another river, and eventually to Arctic Ocean. It never freezes over. The Lake Baikal freezes over completely by the end of January. Lake Baikal consists of 3 huge depressions. The southern one, where we are at the moment, with the deepest point 1,490 meters. The northern depression, roughly, with about 900 meters. And the middle one, with the deepest point 1,637 meters. But you've got to take into consideration the fact that the level of the sediment, soft bottom, more than 12 kilometers. Nobody knows exactly how deep it is, but for sure, more than 12 kilometers. So if you take it into consideration, you will get the hollow as the deepest place on our planet, deeper than any other oceans. So once you incline to write a book about the trip to the center of the planet, you get to start it from Lake Baikal. There are 22 stationary islands, and the biggest one is located in the central depression that is called Alhon. The name Alhon can be translated from the language of local tribes, like with a bit of forest, though the greater part of the island is covered with the forest, and even the island is pretty big. It's over 70 kilometers long. The lake is very big. It is growing. Every single year it becomes wider, deeper, and longer. The length of the lake is 636 kilometers. It can be compared with the distance between 2 big Russian cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg. The width varies from 28 to 80 kilometers. And again, remember, it is growing. Scientists treat Lake Baikal as the baby ocean. Every single year it becomes wider, deeper, and longer. The continents on our planet, they are drifting all the time. But the human being's life is so short, we cannot visually identify it. But still, there is a statistics. And like 2 continents, Africa and South America, spreading from each other, with average speed up to 7 centimeters a year. With the same speed, the shores of Lake Baikal are growing. And it actually depends on the seismic activity of the region, connected with the territory around Lake Baikal and the lake itself. The flora and fauna of Lake Baikal is highly endemic. Over 80% of the population is highly endemic. So you cannot find them anywhere else. The water of Lake Baikal is very transparent. Do you know how to identify the transparency of the water?
Sand?
There is an international scheme. People take a metal dish 30 centimeters in diameter, tie it to the rope, go by boat, drop it to the water, and watch it sinking. As soon as it disappears, this is considered to be the maximum transparency. At Lake Baikal, it reaches roughly about 53 meters in early spring when the ice starts melting. Average would be 40 meters. But you know that this aspect is considered to be something that can be affected by different reasons. You know, the time of the day, the season. For example, in the middle of summer, some plants that originally grow under the water start blossoming. And of course, it affects the transparency. But if you didn't have a chance to see lake any other season, you will still find it pretty transparent. The water of Lake Baikal has a great concentration of natural oxygen. Fancy, if you try to compare Lake Baikal with any other lakes in the whole world, Lake Superior in the States, Lake Michigan, Lake Tanganyika, or any other ones, you know that a live organisms can live at any of other lakes at the maximum depth of 200 meters. They are not as deep as Lake Baikal, but at the bottom of any other lake in the whole world, there is dead water. None of the live organisms can live there. At Lake Baikal, using the submarines, and scientists managed to get to the deepest point, and they saw very great variety of different kind of organisms. So they can live even at the maximum depth. So it has a great concentration of natural oxygen. Another fact I'd like to draw attention to is the age of Lake Baikal. You know, this scheme is pretty old, over 10 years, but you know, scientists study the lake, and every single year, as I mentioned, they discover something new. And of course, it's not easy to change the scheme all the time, but I'd like to draw attention to the age of Lake Baikal. It's written here over 25 million years, but nowadays, scientists identify the age of Lake Baikal as over 35 million years. And it doesn't have any sign of getting older. Again, if you try to compare Lake Baikal with any other lakes in the whole world, those that were founded, they were formed as a result of tectonic activity or volcanic activity. They never live more than 10 million years. Later, they get some swamping areas and die. Lake Baikal age, identified by the scientists as over 65 million years, and it doesn't have any sign of getting older. It is growing. Any questions at this point? No.
Is it all rocks at the bottom?
Yes, yes, yes. There are a few beaches, I would say, full of sand, but most of the time just the rocks. So now I invite you to get down the hole and
Fishes.
So this hole was added to the museum quite recently, roughly about 5 years ago, and the information presented here illustrates the answer to the question how the planet was formed. But you're not little children, you're adults, you've seen so many documentaries, read some books, so watched the movies, so I'm sure you're familiar with this process or with these questions. So I will just summarize the knowledge you have and tell you in detail about Lake Baikal. You know that there are hundreds of theories to answer the question how the planet was formed. There are so many scientists, different points of view, but there are two most popular ones. The first one is based on the Bible, God created everything. The second most popular is a Big Bang in the space. This is the scientific station, so scientific museum, so definitely they believe in the second version. But you know that, talking about the period, how the planet was formed. Of course, you've got to remember that that was the time when the planet started to form from different kind of blocks, stones or rocks. They've been flying into space. But suddenly, when the planet started to form, there was no atmosphere. There were toxic gases around. But what I'd like you to remind you is there were 5 huge catastrophes on our planet. As a result of each one, there was a big step forward. It was the something that gave an effort for the evolutionary process. As a result of the first one, the first bacteria and microorganisms started to form, and then they started to develop through the evolutionary process. Some of them transformed into the, some very primitive organisms, animals or whatever. Then there was a cold age, and some of them died. The others went back to the water. So it happened 5 times. As a result of the 5th catastrophe, the dinosaurs died on our planet. But what I'd like you to do is take a look to the globe presented here in the historical period mentioned right above, 3,700 up to 2,500 million years ago. That was the shape and the number of the continents. Quite different from what we get used to, right? And now, walking towards that wall, I'd like you to take a look to your right and left and see the transformation in different historical periods. Because once there was only one big continent on our planet, like to your right-hand side. So you can see over here, you will see hundreds of smaller ones. And little by little, coming to the last catastrophe on our planet, we can see the shape and the number of the continents that we can recognize. This historical period started from 75.5 to 60 million years ago. Once we had a climate like in Africa or Australia nowadays, it was pretty warm here because studying the geology and excavating some soil, studying the climate, drilling the lakes, rivers, oceans, scientists get the proofs. Once there were palm trees here and great variety of exotic animals like dinosaurs, for example, rhinoceros, and many, many other ones. Even nowadays, digging a garden, sometimes people manage to find the bones of ancient animals. Living in a cold climate like ours, it helped, the temperatures, low temperatures help to preserve all those remnants. So, but you know that at Lake Baikal, we still have a witness of the time of dinosaurs. It's one of the fish that I'm sure you know this, or you can recognize it. It's the sturgeon. Right over here you can see a sturgeon. Where caviar comes from. This is the average size sturgeon because they can grow bigger. And when this size sturgeon was caught, people managed to get 9 kilos of black caviar. What a treasure. But I'd like to draw attention to the shape of its head. It's pretty flat. It illustrates that very period of evolution when we've got reptiles from the fish. So the evolutionary process, because this fish is pretty unique. It can survive without water for some certain period of time. It's strong enough to practically crawl. And there are a few other ones. The other one is called timing. Later in the aquariums, I will draw attention to that one. Going for some spawning areas, they can stay without water for a few minutes. Not just like 1 or 2, or like 20 or half an hour, or even longer. So that's, again, it's a certain stage of evolutionary process. So little by little we get right over here, and I'd like to draw attention to this screen. Talking about Lake Baikal, we've got to think about territory of India. Sounds probably strange, right? India. Lake Baikal in India, what's the connection? How come? But that's the thing we've got to start with. Remember, the continents are drifting. It's a permanent process. And once Hindustan, the territory of India, was the part of the African continent, then it divided from the mainland and started to float in the ocean like Australia does nowadays for 80 million years. And then it started the Eurasia continent. The film will start in a second, just, those certain pictures. This is the glacier period. By the way, at the time of the last glacier period, the last cold age, Siberia was very unique territory because only the tops of the valleys were covered with, the bottoms of the valleys were covered with ice. The tops of the hills were left free from ice. It means that certain kind of bacteria and microbes managed to survive since that times. That made the environment pretty unique and pretty special. Is this? Okay, this is the last place here. That's what I told you. Only the bottoms of the valleys were covered with ice. But again, coming back to the formation of Lake Baikal. So when two plateaus, there was a great tension. Because when Hindustan started to push, it stuck to the Eurasia continent, floating for 80 million years. Then it stuck to the Eurasia continent, started to push really hard. It's still pushing. It causes the earthquakes at Lake Baikal. Fancy. Every single minute, sometimes every single second, there is an earthquake here. Most of the tremblings we do not feel. But sometimes if you look at the statistics, you will see that The earthquakes we have can be up to maximum according to the International Richter scale. So you can see the formation of the Eurasia continent, 250 to 240 million years, Sibersky Plateau and Amursky Plateau. And see, one covers above the other. You see, it covers the other. And then a little crack started to form the halo of Lake Baikal. This is the very beginning of Baikal rift zone, from 30 to 23 million years ago. That's how it started. And now Indus is coming, you see? And it's still pushing really hard. If you take a look to this map, you can see Lake Baikal. You know, but down there you can see another lake. This one is called Khupsugul. It is located in Mongolia. You know, since the time immemorial, local tribe people used to call it the younger brother of Lake Baikal. Nobody knew how to understand that, you know? But as the time passed and, you know, the technologies and human beings, methods and brains reached a certain level, scientists started to study this moment and they realized that that is true. It's a part, it used to be a part of Lake, it's still part of Lake Baikal. When Himalayas started to grow, they divided Lake Baikal into two. Because flora and fauna and structures, you know, the geology is roughly the same. So it's the part of Lake Baikal. But now we are right over here, the mouth of River Angara. You see, River Angara is the only river that flows out of Lake Baikal. The depressions are marked with black spots. This is the biggest island that is called Alphon. This one is the delta of Selenga River that comes from Mongolia. It brings 51% of the inflow. It feeds the lake. But you see, the whole lake is surrounded with the mountains. I hope it will clear up later in the afternoon, and then you will be able to admire the beauty of the Rocky Mountains that is called Hamar Daban, with snow-covered peaks that keep snow all the year round. That's why it makes it very picturesque. Further, the Primorsk Range, Sayana Mountains, but you know that if you see to these blue lines, you will see plenty of rivers feeding the lake. There is a legend about Lake Baikal and River Angara. Lake Baikal has always been presented like an old man with long grey hair and white beard. And he had a beautiful daughter, Angara, like a mermaid. Very kind, generous, and one day she fell in love with another river, Yenisei. She wanted to be with her beloved, but her father wanted she to marry somebody else. And he trapped her in a big, beautiful castle with big fans. But she wanted to be with her beloved, really. And she asked all the rivers feeding her father to fulfill her within one night period, to be strong enough to overjump that sort of cage and run away from her father. And they did. Everybody was eager to help her. And they did. So in the morning she was strong enough and she ran away. And we know that that's the only river that flows out of it. But you know that Lake Baikal, when he woke up, he got very angry to his daughter. He grabbed a huge mountain that is called Shaman Rock and threw to his daughter. But he didn't want to kill her. He wanted to stop her. But that's considered to be a natural border between the lake and the river. Later within the tour here, we will make a quick stop there for a view, for photos, and you will see that if you are standing on the shore facing the rock, you will see a natural border, like a natural dam that divides the lake from the river. So if you face the rock, all the water to your right-hand side is the river, to your left, Lake Baikal. And you know that, but she was so kind. She wanted to express her gratitude to all the rivers who had helped her. And she used to wear a beautiful necklace of different kind of minerals, precious and precious stones. She tore it up and threw to all these rivers. And that's how local tribes people explain the concentration of natural stones in the Rocky Mountains around Lake Baikal. Some of them are presented here. The first one is amethyst, jade, euphrates, different colors from light, practically white, gray, blue, green, dark green, or light green. This is lapis lazuli, but the most rare one and unique is the purple stone that is called charit. That's the only deposit on the whole planet, this purple stone. So if you'd like to buy something special really from here that cannot be produced in China or somewhere else, so I would recommend you to buy something made of charit. If you collect the rocks, you can buy just a rock, probably not this big because it's too heavy, but even smaller ones. If you collect, for example, some figurines in the shape of cats, elephants, even the seals or god of Lake Baikal that is called Burhan, according to the beliefs, every family's got to have one. And whenever you receive gas, you drink alcohol. First few drops are supposed to be given to the head of the god. That brings happiness, good health, healthy kids, and harmony in the relationship of ladies and gentlemen. That's the local tribe's idea. So this is the most unique one. that is called charring. Of course, there's a great concentration of deposits of marbles, quartzites, and this is the mineral I'd like to draw attention to, because tomorrow, when we get to the Museum of Wooden Architecture, I will show you a church as one of the oldest exhibits there. That refers to the 17th century, and the windows there were made of mica. This is the mineral, mica. That's how it looks like. So now I'd like to draw attention to this very computer that is right behind the ladies. So it shows the tremblings. You know that there are over 30 seismic stations located all over the lake. They register the tremblings. And as I told you, of course, every single minute there is an earthquake. If you take a look to the pictures that illustrate the recent earthquakes that took place all over the planet, like China, 2011, 7.8, Chile, 2010, 8.8, Turkey, 2011, 7.3, and Japan, 2011, 7.4. It looks scary, definitely. Because if you take a look to this map that shows the statistics from 1950 to 2009, it also looks scary, because the most dangerous one, the maximum, the most strongest ones are marked with big stars, and you can see quite a concentration of those and a bit smaller ones. So to illustrate with a bright example how terrible earthquake can happen here, I'd like to remind you the earthquake that took place in 1863. It was Christmas Eve, and as a result of a big tremble, a huge area, over 200 square meters, sank down with all the settlements, live animals, wild ones or domestic ones, with everything. It was covered with water. That's how it happened. And it was a disaster, definitely. And living in a seismic activity zone, it makes you always think about it. But we little by little get used to, and of course, we are trained since early childhood what to do. We're informed what we're supposed to do. But, the more you learn, the more you understand. You cannot do anything. If you live on the ground level, that's okay. You've got those few minutes to leave the apartment and, get to some other place or free open without any buildings. But if you live any higher, let's say 5th, 6th, or even higher, no chance. Elevators, lifts not allowed to use, and if you're marathon champion, you can run that down within those short period of time. But anyway, you know what? These screens show us the earthquake activity at the moment. And may I ask you to jump, please? At least you, first row. You caused the vibration. Of course, it wouldn't be registered as the earthquake, but it's quite sensible, and one of the seismic stations is located at the basement of this building. But what I'd like to tell you is you've got to know the rule how to read this scheme. If you come here and see the it means nothing to worry about. Just forget about it, relax, and enjoy your life. But if you come here and see the flat line, absolutely flat line, from few seconds to few minutes, it means get ready, something serious is going to happen. But as you see, the seismic activity taking place, and there's nothing to worry about. So relax and enjoy. Here's some examples of the organisms that live at the lake. And their lifestyle would be really unique because they purify the water of Lake Baikal. First, let me draw attention to these creatures. What do you think it is? Just take a look. Show to everyone. No.
That little.
Say something. Any other ideas?
What?
These are tiny little crustaceans. That's the way they look like if you take a look through the microscope to them. You know that they're absolutely colorless. You cannot see them in the water. There are billions of them. Billions of them. But we still drink from the surface. I would recommend you to drink from the surface, from the shores of this very settlement, because it's a very touristic place, and human beings are all human beings, In spite of all the restrictions, bans, and whatever, this is the way they live. They do pollute everything around them, going for a swim, making pee or whatever, that's the way it happens. But anyway, in spite of all these things, there are plenty of true laws, restrictions, and bans, and there's no industry zero around Lake Baikal at the moment. And it's still considered to be the cleanest water resource on our planet. If you take a look to the schemes adopted in every single country, like certain scale that refers to the quality of the water, Lake Baikal is always going to be above the list. That's how clean it is. and thanks to the great variety of natural purifying equipment that lives at the lake. Some of them is this one. This is the crustacean that is called Epishura. When Epishura was discovered, there are plenty of them, as I told you, at the lake, but none of them can live even in the river Angara. They live only at the lake. And when the scientists discovered them and studied its effect, they got so much enthusiastic. They wanted to spread it all over the world because there were so many people suffering from lack of pure drinking water. It couldn't survive anywhere. Only here at Lake Baikal. Since then, UNESCO included Lake Baikal in the list of the World Heritage, and we started to call it the well of the planet. That for nowadays practically contains a quarter of pure drinking water of the whole planet. It's really a huge volume of water. Let me illustrate it with the example. Fancy, if Lake Baikal freezes over completely, from the surface till the very bottom, and one managed to cut it into cubes 1 kilometer each, put it in one row, it would be the belt around the planet, and 3,000 kilometers would be left. Another example, fancy if all these sources would stop feeding the lake, and people of the whole world would use the water from Lake Baikal for all the purposes, for cooking, washing, taking a bath, watering their gardens, for all kind of industries, for everything. It would have taken them over hundreds of years to empty the lake. And it is growing, remember, it is growing. Every single year it becomes wider, deeper and longer. And of course the volume of water is growing.
From the snow, from the mountains?
Yes, and rains, whatever, natural resources. So we started to call it the well of the planet. It's the treasure of the whole mankind. Not only people living in this village or this city or surrounding territories, Russia. No, it's the heritage of the mankind. I'd like to draw your attention to some other crustaceans. Take a look. The shape of this one is quite familiar to you, probably. Kind of shrimps, right? Pretty ugly looking, with all these horns and legs, but still crustaceans. But they are very industrious. They purify the water of Lake Baikal. They eat dead organisms, dead organic. Fancy how it happens. If there is an accident, an immense drought, of course his relatives would like to get the body to bury this person. They have only 3 days to get the body. Later they will find a skeleton. But in 3 months, nobody will find even a skeleton, even a bone, nothing would be left. A great variety of microbes, bacteria and organisms that live in the water of Lake Baikal would absorb everything, even the bones. Using the submarine, scientists managed to get to the very bottom of Lake Baikal, and going down they discovered the most ancient flat worm that is called Turbillaria planaria. This is the Latin word. And the thing is, it's really unique. It has very unique features. Fancy. The average size of the worm is the size of the human being hand. But as closer they went down to the bottom, they noticed a tendency. The worm size is bigger and bigger, and it refers not only to the worms, this very worm flatworm, but any other animals and organisms that live in the water of Lake Baikal. As closer you go down, as bigger they are. Even the shrimps, even the crustaceans, the small, at the top level, at the shore, walking along the shore, one can come across, small ones, 2-3 centimeters, their body long. But then you get to the, let's say, to the middle level, and you will see them 5-6 centimeters. You get to the bottom up to 20. The same tendency refers to the worms. So at the bottom, they managed to find them up to 30 or 50 centimeters in diameter, like the size of a pizza. And they discovered a very interesting feature. Once you get a worm and cut it like pizza into many pieces, within few hours, every piece will reach the size of the original animal. Lake Baikal is full of enigmas. We have sponges. You know that sponges not only live in the seas and oceans, salt water. This is a freshwater lake, but we have a great variety of sponges. Do you know how to identify the age of the sponges? Like at the tree, when we cut the tree, we count the age rings. We're supposed to take a look to the shape of the sponge. Sometimes it grows like cactuses, one little ball above the other, and we count those little balls. Sometimes it grows like pyramid with the white top at the top, and there are little waves on the surface, and we count those little waves. There are flat sponges, great variety of flat sponges, and like on the surface of topple we count the squares. We're supposed to count little holes on the surface of a flat sponge. So the average age of the sponges at Lake Baikal is over 200 years old. All the organisms that live in the cold water of Lake Baikal, they grow very, very slowly. It refers to all kind of alive creatures that live at the lake. You know that For example, the fish. This is the fish lake Baikal famous for. There are over 60 families of fish families that live at the lake. And this is OMUL, O-M-U-L. But take a look. This is the age, 2.5 months. The next bottle is 2 years. The difference in the size of the body is less than 1 centimeter. It again illustrates a bright, fact about the size or the speed of them they're growing. So they grow very, very slowly. The average size fish we buy at the fish market, we order in the restaurants, roughly is 7 or 10 years old, this size. And bigger and bigger and bigger. They live quite a long life, up to, it depends on the fish family. Some of them live 60, the others 30, but still they grow very, very slowly. Now I'd like to draw attention to another endemic of Lake Baikal. This is the fish, oil fish, that is called galamyanka. It is the viperous endemic of Lake Baikal. What it means? It means that this fish doesn't lay any fish eggs. It gives life to thousands of alive fish. It's not a mammal. It's a fish, but there's no eggs. See, another breakdown in the evolutionary process. Take a look. So Lake Baikal is full of enigmas, full of extraordinary facts, and it's really hard to explain for scientists. Sometimes they try to find the explanation. It works for for a few years, and they discover something new that breaks the theory, and they've got to find another one. But are you ready for another interesting fact about this fish? Fancy. These fish migrate vertically. Few times a day it gets to the upper level and then down to the very bottom of the lake. And it doesn't have any problem with decompression. But think about the divers, scuba divers, submarines, the pressure in the water. Let me illustrate it with the example. This equipment is called batometer. It is made of very good steel, hard metal, but normally it used to be a cylinder, so people use it to make tests of water at various levels. So this one, so how it happens, they tie it to the rope, go away boat, drop it to the water. With the help of another one, they open this little door, water gets in, they close it, bring it up to the laboratory and make tests. So this one was floating for 10 minutes at the depth of 200 meters. See, it was smashed by the water. What's supposed to happen with this fish on the way from the top to the very bottom? It doesn't have any problem with decompression because it has a great concentration of fish oil, over 45% of fish oil inside. It's practically transparent. Children like magic, especially little ones. And definitely some fishermen, when they get some children with them, to go fishing, sometimes like to show them some funny moments. For example, once among the other fish you get galamyanka, that's the name of the fish, they can leave it on the rocks. And within few minutes it starts disappearing, it starts melting. The bones of this fish are also rather transparent, and you have that kind of visual effect as if the fish starts disappearing. But that there's another very interesting fact. Local people, especially ladies who live on the settlements around the lake, they do cook for their families. And you know that they widely use this fish oil for making salads or frying vegetables because it has a flavor of carrot. And fish with the flavor of carrot. Incredible. But that's what it is. Let's go further. Metaphors. That white line at the top represents the ice of Lake Baikal. It freezes over completely by the end of January and starts melting only in May. So when you come here in June, this is the summer months, it's not frozen definitely completely, but you still can see some icebergs, you can see the ice blocks just along the shoreline, some other things. And definitely the water temperature is really cold, it's very low. It takes so much time to warm the surface area to get it suitable for swimming, for example. So you know that the temperature of the water actually depends not only on the atmosphere air temperature, the sun, to warm the surface area, but also the peculiarity of shoreline. For example, to go for a swim from this very settlement shore, of course, it's equal to go for a swim in an open sea. What it means? It means that we've got to take into consideration the shape of the shore. What I mean is that here, we have steep cliffs. the shoreline goes down for 3-5 meters maximum, and there's a steep cliff, straight wall down to minimum of 500 meters. Though the deepest point here is 1,490 meters. The opposite shore, the eastern one, is more shallow, and the water there gets much warmer. So the maximum temperature of water in the Lisvanka settlement can reach roughly about +10, +12 degrees above 0 Celsius. But there are some other areas at the lake where the temperature can get much higher, and there is kind of appendix between the mainland and the island Olkhon. This kind of appendix we call small sea. It's not the sea, it's just the local name, but we call it small sea. It's rather shallow there, and the water can get there up to +22, 24 degrees above 0 Celsius. There are so-called sand beaches there, and we have another extraordinary example there. What I mean is that we have so-called walking trees there. Walking trees. Do you know what kind of trees are called walking? In reality, they are very old pine trees that originally grow on the sand beaches. But you see, this is the lake from the geographical point of view. But local tribes people used to call it the sacred sea, the glorious sea, the sea, not just the lake. Scientists nowadays call it the baby ocean. So they truly believe that one day it will grow that big that will break the Eurasia continent into two. Most likely join some other water resources and get salt water. We don't know, but of course millions of years will pass. But what I'd like to tell you is that we have storms at Lake Baikal. Real storms, fancy. The height of the waves at Lake Baikal, located in the middle of the Eurasia continent, can reach over 5 meters. Just a lake, 5 meters waves. We don't have those big boats. Even cruising boats we have, they are tiny little compared to those ones that are used in the oceans or some of these seas. So going for a cruise, the boat, makes no difference how big it is, never goes across the lake, only along the shoreline. Whenever they get some information using the radio channel, they do their best to park the boat half to be on the surface, on the shore, and wait till the storm comes down. They never move along the shore or somewhere else when there is a storm. And you know that this storm definitely caused by the strong wind. There are 5 strong winds at the lake, and the most dangerous one is called Sarma. It starts behind the mountains in Sarma Valley. It's really very powerful, it's very strong. It's like once you experience this wind, you have an impression that somebody puts you just at the back of a jet. You cannot stand, it will blow you away. So what happens is it causes storms, big waves, and of course it causes erosion. Fancy. My arm is a tree trunk. My fingers are the roots. So sometimes the roots located so high from the surface area so that a human being can walk under the tree, like a tunnel, or just to go under to take some photos. And of course, if you take a look to such a tree from a distance, you can see the sand, the dunes moving, you have an impression that the tree is walking. Though it doesn't walk anyway, but that's what we call a walking tree. So what else I'd like to draw your attention? I have already mentioned that we have the freshwater seals. And you know that one can see them anywhere, even along the shore of Lisvanka settlement. But of course they prefer the northern part of the lake with the virgin nature where there are Ushkani islands. This is the northern part of the lake. And there are plenty of small islands over here, and that's where the majority of the seals prefer to stay all the year round, because this virgin nature, no settlements, they feel quite safe. Any questions at this point? No. Now I'd like to draw attention to these 2 models of the big ships. The icebreakers. They were made in England in 1900. Have you been told the story of the Trans-Siberia? No. Not yet. Okay, I will just briefly remind you this story, and then you will understand the purpose and the greatest role it played in the history of Russia, and of course the building of the Trans-Siberia. In Russia, the government been thinking about the building of Trans-Siberia even a century before Alexander III, the Tsar, got the crown, because actually it was his initiative, to build the Trans-Siberia. Every time they tried to make some calculations, how much would it cost, they tried to move it to a later period, because Russia's been exhausted by plenty of wars. With lots of European countries, Russian-Turkey war, and some other ones. And at this time, that was also very complicated, very serious situation connected with the threat of the beginning of Russian-Japanese war that in reality took place in 1904-1905, and there were some uprisings held between the borders between Russia and China. And Alexander III decided to hold a secret meeting where he invited his leading ministers and generals, and he asked them only one question. The question was, how much time would it take to bring the army from the European part of our country to the borders of Vladivostok, you know, the Pacific Ocean? Fortunately, they were very honest. They said minimum 2.5 years. Talking to your enemies, you cannot say, guys, come on, wait for us, 2 years, wait 3, we bring the army, then start fighting. So sounds ridiculous. Of course, he got so much frustrated and frightened about this moment, so he gave an order to build the road. And they started to build it from both ways, from Moscow through Chelyabinsk to here, and from Vladivostok to here. And then, all of a sudden, Lake Baikal was on the way. It was so hard to build the tracks around the southern part of Lake Baikal that was called the Circum-Railway Road around the Lake Baikal. Not all over the lake, just around the southern part of Lake Baikal. And they've got to let the army, let the soldiers cross the lake. And that is why it was so difficult to build the tracks all over the lake, or just around the southern part of the lake. First of all, severe climate, very cold. The winters were much colder than nowadays. Lake Baikal froze over up to 2.5 meters, sometimes 3 meters, extremely cold. Another reason, the Rocky Mountains around the lake, because sometimes they were made of granite, too tough, you know, to make tunnels and so on and so forth. Of course, you know, there were not enough of, very experienced engineers and, you know, some of the specialists to build the tracks in the Rocky Mountains. Sometimes the mountains were made of basalts or limestone. Of course, they've got to build very fragile. What I mean is that living in seismic activity, seasonal changes, you've got to take into consideration. Sometimes with the snow and this spring water, all these rocks could go down and destroy the tracks. And they've got to build the walls protecting the tracks. Sometimes they've got to, there were steep cliffs, and they had to make an explosion at the bottom of the mountains to make a platform to put the tracks on. And there were so many other problems they had to face. And what happened is that they decided to order the icebreakers in England, because England was the country famous for its shipbuilding. They were one of the first icebreakers built in the world. And they wanted to use them and let the soldiers cross the lake, and of course use them in order to deliver some building materials. And the Tsar government representatives went to England. They explained all the details, they explained the situation, whether they wanted to use it, and everything was quite okay. They made an order. Sometime later, they came back, and just for a second, just switch it off. What happened is they ordered them. Then, as soon as they were completed, with quite a short period of time, but everything was done in a perfect way, you know, really good quality, the Tsar government came back. They came back, examined everything, they even let them float, you know, just to see that they're really good, and then they paid the money. And then Englishmen had heard one of the most ridiculous requests. They were asked to break them down into thousands of tiny little pieces, because they had to deliver them from England through the whole European part of Russia, Ural Mountain, to this very village. And they were put back together in the shipyard of this village. Local people, the Tsar government, the builders of the Trans-Siberia got so much enthusiastic, because they really were eager to start using them. But that happiness, that joy didn't last forever, only for 2 months, one period, and then winter came. And they turned out to be absolutely useless. They were not strong enough to break such a hard ice of Lake Baikal. But they had to find a solution. They had to find a way to let the soldiers, the army, to cross the lake. And they were very smart and very resourceful, and they found the solution. They decided to put the tracks on the ice and let the horses pull the train carriages. They couldn't use the locomotive, you know, there were steam trains, they caused vibration and heat. So to avoid any accidents, they decided to let the horses pull the train carriages. This ice road with the horses was considered to be the official part of the Trans-Siberian for 2 years. Within this period of time, they managed to bring across over 2,000 of train carriages, full of soldiers, military equipment, building materials, whatever. And that was really the greatest idea that they could use at that time. we still have this boat. Tomorrow, on the way to the Open Air Museum, we are going to pass it and you will be able to see. We have a museum on board. Unfortunately, this one couldn't survive because after the revolution of 1917, there was a civil war in Russia when the society split into two, red Russians and white Russians. And that was the time when the Czech troops who supported the White Army were on this territory. And when they noticed the Red Army coming closer, they made an explosion. They didn't want the red ones to get it. But it was extremely huge. To illustrate with the example how huge it was, I can tell you that it used to have 3 decks. 2 for people for the transportation of some building materials and military equipment, and 1 for a train. You've come here by train. How many train carriages were in your train? Well, roughly. Okay, let it be 6. Remember, just close your eyes. Remember the size of 1 train carriage, or those 6 in a line. So fancy. This icebreaker could easily take on board 28 train carriages. It's hard to believe. That's just the beginning of the 20th century, 1900. Another thing is that, but to be honest, 1 modern train carriage is equal to 2 of the previous century. So 14 modern train carriages could easily go on board. And that's really the achievement of the engineering construction, I would say, at that time. Okay, let's go further. So we're nuts, probably. Here you can see lynx. This is squirrel in the screen. Here we can see the wolf, Baikal eagle. That brown animal is not a bear. Very often people, mix up it with the bear, brown bear. It's not a bear, it's the wolverine. It's actually an adult animal, but whenever it is being attacked by any bigger one, it never runs away. Take a look here. This is the sable. Take a look to its teeth. It's a predator. Show us its teeth. Oh, yes. The nickname of this one is soft gold of Russia. It's the most highly valued Siberian animal. 1 pound of Barguzin sable at the international auction in St. Petersburg starts from $900 American for 1 pound. Fancy. But the size of this animal is roughly the size of domestic cat. You can imagine how many pounds you need for a photo, let's say. Brown bears. The brown bears we have, they're very big and dangerous animals, and they have very much in common with grizzly bears. On the territories where they geographically have a chance to meet each other, they make couples. They are hibernators. Well, yes, but they are not hibernators. They can be easily aroused in winter. They can be woken up in winter. But when the bear was woken up, it will never go back to its den. It will walk around trying to find food. So it becomes very dangerous because it's practically impossible for a bear to find any food in winter. You see, naturally, brown bears, they're vegetarians. They like to eat the berries, mushrooms, they dug the roots of some plants. But in winter, when the soil is frozen, there's no chance. The level of snow sometimes in the forest area reaches up to 2 meters, so it's hard to move fast enough to grab the other animals. And the only chance to survive with such an animal that's been woken up is to get closer to the settlements and try to attack either domestic animals or even a human being. But there is a universal rule that refers to any wild animals, tigers, lions, snow leopards, or any other one, bears, for example. Once they taste the flesh of human beings, they become man-eating. They would never taste any other food. They will follow only human beings, trying to attack them. So such animal must be killed once. While hibernating period, female bear gives birth to 1 or 2 cubs. They stay with their mother for 2 years. This period of time they need to be brought up to learn how to find food, how to survive, and then they leave their mother and live their own life. Thousands of birds come to the mouth of River Angara within the winter period. Some of them are very exotic for Siberia. They come from Australia or some other Asian countries, but they come here only for winter, during the winter period, because River Angara never freezes over, and of course at the mouth of River Angara there are so many nutritious food, healthy food, and scientists, ornithologists normally say that they come here for vitamin cocktails, and then they fly further and start nesting. So that's the reason to come. And of course the water temperature is just +4. Even the atmosphere air temperature is -30 or 25, it depends. You can see some deer before there was a reindeer. That's the reindeer. The most unique deer we have 9 kinds of deer, and the most rare one is a masked deer. some of the organs of this deer been used in perfume industries to make the smell last longer, but fortunately not anymore. When the chemical industry reached a certain level and they created some artificial substances. So this is wild boar. Come on. So magic. We can see the stills. They like to, to go for some bathing, to line the rocks or in the blocks of ice. Very cute. Their eyes, black eyes, they look like aliens, or like two big plates. So if you didn't mind, let's go further, but I'd like to the lake frozen, and it's really picturesque, they're really awesome. And there's no words to describe it. It's worth seeing. It's really something beautiful, extraordinarily beautiful. This is late spring. You can see plenty of cracks, but you can see the jeep crossing the lake. In winter, Lake Baikal looks like a highway with some road signs, with speed limits. There's no need to have anything of this kind for local people, because once we get to the shore, we see the location across the lake, a certain mountain, and we just drive there. But there are so many tourists who come here from different parts of Russia or even from abroad. They come here by car, with their cars. And of course, they need those road signs, because once there is a snowstorm or something, they can easily get lost, like in the middle of nowhere, no directions. But you know that even the ice is very transparent under your feet, Of course, late spring, the sun, starts warm the surface area and becomes less transparent. But in winter, the very beginning of winter, middle of winter, late autumn, that's the time, the period when the temperature starts going down. And fancy those huge waves that splash the Rocky Mountains. And the temperature starts going down, and the water starts freezing over. So later one can admire the masterpieces created by Mother Nature. Sometimes those icicles look so beautiful, like palaces of snow queen, or some palm trees or very exotic flowers that do not exist on our planet, probably, or probably they exist, but they're tiny little. But it doesn't mean that this water covers the trees or bushes or something like this. No, it's just the water and the wind. Nature creates those masterpieces, and that's why winter seasons are very, very popular. This is the reason to come here. Of course, the structure of ice can be very different. Sometimes it's milky white, absolutely white, but most of the winter days, they are sunny days. And with the reflection of the sun in transparent ice, one can see the variety of colors, all the colors of rainbow. It can be dark blue, light blue, green, orange, pink, any color, purple, whatever. So just the effect of the sun. And it's also very picturesque. Sometimes you can see the ice cakes, very transparent ice, like Swarovski crystals. Sometimes they have all variety of colors or just milky white. Very, very beautiful. So I invite you to come here in winter. Let's go. We have 4 dams on the river Angora. This is Irkutsk, Bratsk, Ust-Ilimsk. The model is pretty old because nowadays we have the 4th one. They are with the hydroelectric power stations, thanks to which we have the cheapest electricity in the country. Fancy. People at the European part of Russia pay from 4 up to 8 rubles per kilowatt. People who live around Lake Baikal and the dams here, this region, we pay less than 1 ruble per kilowatt. So this is the reason why we have lots of electricity taken enterprises, like heavy machinery plants, aluminium plants, wood processing plants. One of the, aircraft plants, for example, one of them is located in Irkutsk that produces one of the best fighters in the world, MiG Sukhoi B-200. They are world famous, so I believe you've heard about them. So they are produced here in our city, in Irkutsk. The next few pictures represent the coal deposits. The coal we have is brown coal. The deposits we have, they're very numerous, but they all of considerable age. They're very rich. The coal we have are mostly used for domestic purposes, and it's very easy to get, with like open method, because we excavate it from the surface. So there's no need to go down under the, Okay, now let's take a look at the exterior. So over here you can see the aquariums with some representative of fish families. And the first one is Taimen. That's very strong. These are babies. They can reach up to 2 meters. The length of the body can reach up to 2 meters, 2.5. and even more. You know that the fish is pretty strong. Going to its spawning areas, it goes to the small rivers or tributaries of big rivers. Sometimes it happens actually in spring. It happens in spring, and this is the period of flood when the snow starts melting in the forest and the mountains, and all this water goes down. And for the animals, it's very very difficult period, because sometimes, for example, the squirrels got to get to the ground to jump from one tree to another, or for the other animals to be rescued by people. And so there was a very funny episode connected with this fish. Once one expedition of scientists, it was in spring, was walking through the forest, and all of a sudden they saw it was a tree trunk, but suddenly it started to move. And the first idea was, is it a crocodile? But we're in Siberia, what crocodiles are you talking about? They cannot live here. And then they got closer and they saw a huge big fish timing. And you know what? That was the flood period. So the squirrels trying to escape from the flood had to get to the ground and then get to another tree. And once they got down, this fish started to hunt them. So, when the scientists got closer to this fish, it was, that last movement was sort of convulsion, because it got dead. What I mean is that, you see, this fish started to catch those squirrels, and it managed to get, when they cut its tummy, they found 8 squirrels, and the 9th got stuck in its throat, because the tail was just out of its mouth. So that's how greedy these creatures can be. Now I'd like to draw your attention to the next aquarium, where you can see the crustaceans, those little ones I showed you in the bottle, and here you can see some alive ones. They're really ugly creatures. I mean, if you get closer, see all those legs and horns. They move as far and as strong as they have strength in their muscles, but as soon as they get tired, it's sort of a jump. As soon as it gets tired, they just fell down to the ground, or just to the bottom of the aquarium or the lake. But you know that if you come closer and try to take a look at those, you will see that probably you'll recognize them. Can you? Will you come closer? Do they remind you somebody? Use your imagination. Try to, make them bigger. James Cameron, the film producer, the director from Hollywood, he once got here, and that was the period when he was looking for the prototype of the main character of his horror movie, the aliens. And that's the aliens. These are the aliens. He found these creatures, he said, that's the one I need. He made them really huge, like 5 meters high, and they used them as the main character of his horror movie, and he gave us a award. Once he's inclined to shoot another movie, he will need monsters, he will come here, because we have plenty of those, but tiny little. But if you make them bigger, so you can make those monsters scary. SIG, sea, whitefish, and the other one is sturgeon, Lake Kevin comes from. Sea and olmel both belong to the salmon family. As for the sturgeon, during the Tsar's time, there was a nickname widely used for this fish. That was, the most expensive fish. Whenever you read historical novels or chronicles, you can come across the description of a official party or official dinner, and one of the main dishes was this sea was present. The sturgeon was presented. But you see, the water resources where this fish can live is Caspian Sea, Lake Baikal. That's it. And how they could actually deliver it from here to there? It's quite a distance. Of course, Caspian Sea is much closer. But the thing is that this fish has its peculiarities. You see that once you get a sturgeon, and as soon as you pull it out of the water, it starts rotting the same moment you pull it out of the water. So there was if it wasn't winter, there was no chance to bring it, to the palace of the Tsar. How could they deliver them? But they were, the fishermen at that time were very smart, very resourceful, and they created a method to deliver it in a good condition. But the method they used was like this. Once you got a sturgeon, you pull it out of the water, and then they rolled its head in a fabric and started to pour vodka on its head. Once you keep pouring vodka on its head, it stays good. And normally the price of this detergent depended on the liters of alcohol that's been poured on its head. That's why it has always been very, very expensive. People used to call it the Tsar fish because only the Tsar could afford to taste this fish. Otherwise, you had those few seconds. There were no refrigerators at that time. So if it was a winter period, it was more or less okay. But if it was a warm period, there was no chance to deliver sturgeon to any other place except start cooking it immediately as soon as you pull it out of the water. Okay, let's go further. In the next aquarium to your left-hand side, you can see some more representative of fish families. You can see perch, bream. You can see, supposed to see pike. I cannot see any. Oh no, like that. See with the stripes, the long one with the stripes. And at the back, you can see bullboard. It's like a snake. You see, it's very long. Sometimes they are really 2 meters long or even longer. Bullboard. You know that they are the predators of Lake Baikal. But now I'd like to ask you to touch the surface of this aquarium. Feel how cold the water is at the lake. And now touch the opposite. Feel the difference. I'm sure you notice the difference. And the difference is that the other one is much warmer. You see, that's the aquarium that are to your right-hand side. We can see the fish that we received as a present from Africa, from Lake Tanganyika. Definitely, there's so much sunlight that's the reason why the fish is so colorful, but the variety of fish families is much less than at Lake Baikal. So the next aquarium is also the fish from Tanganyika. The one that is round the corner to your left-hand side is olmo, Lake Baikal famous for. There are 5 kinds of olmos at Lake Baikal, and if you're not a specialist, you can hardly identify one from each other. But anyway, normally scientists identify them at the period when they go to the spawning areas. Next aquarium, you can see the grayling, Baikal grayling. Answer? Okay, this is the grayling. You know, there is a term like fortune teller. The nickname of this fish is weather teller. You know, even nowadays, scientists who incline to work with very complicated equipment under the water, they double check the body focus they get from the metal stations with this fish, because this fish is very sensible to the weather change. It can feel the storm coming. Fancy, even being kept at the aquarium. Normally they behave like this. They stare into the visitors at the wall, talking to them. But you know that if the weather is nice, but if the storm is coming, they start moving like torpedoes non-stop. And scientists even do not know for sure whether this fish is able to feel the atmosphere or atmosphere pressure change, or probably some natural substances that are in the water, because the water, there is a water pipe that takes the water from the cleanest layer of Lake Baikal, and the water is circulating in the aquariums. Probably there are some substances and the concentration is changing, so they do not know. They still try to find the answer. And now let's take a look. It doesn't mean that these two are very well fed. In a while they look the same. They have very much in common with human beings. You know that they are able to give birth till they are 40. The female lives 54, 56 years, male 52, 54. They have very sensible viscuses. They can feel the fish at the distance of 150 meters. And they eat quite much fish. You see, average is from 3 up to 7 kilos a day, one seal eats. But if you multiply it to its population, you will see how rich the lake is with the fish. In a while, they never swim with their tummy up. As soon as they see the attention of the people, the visitors, they like to show off, to demonstrate the beauty of their bodies. So that's why they try to swim this way. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I wanted to tell you within this period of time. But if you have any questions, you're welcome. And now I invite you to get back to the bus and we'll go to the viewpoint.